listener production.
Hello, Antoinette Lattouf with the Weekend Briefing. And I'm going to struggle a bit to introduce today's guest because he's such a massive overachiever. And quite frankly, in my green-eyed opinion, nobody should be this damn talented and accomplished. But jealousy aside, Tim Minchin is a singer, songwriter, pianist, writer, comedian, producer and speaker. And there's probably a few other things I've missed. He has not one, not two, but 3 honorary doctorates. So that essentially means you get a doctorate handed to you and you don't have to write a 1 million word thesis. But he did write his new book. It's his first non-fiction book called You Don't Have to Have a Dream, Advice for the Incrementally Ambitious. So yes, we talk about the book, we grapple with some super big existential questions, and there's also some honest introspection in there too, for good measure. Later in the show, I hand the reins over to my wonderful producer, Helen Smith. She'll guide you through the weekend list, what to do, what to see, what not to do, what to eat, everything in between. But first, here's my chat with Dr. Tim Minchin. Tim, welcome to the Weekend Briefing. I did notice your Instagram bio because it says singer, songwriter, pianist,
come across
writer.
as very pretentious from the outset.
Well, there's a lot of slashes, but there's an interesting slash in this one.
Okay, sorry.
Writer, comedian, producer, speaker, poet, wanker, fair, reader, runner, warrior. What do you worry about?
I guess I'm worried about some of the things that come up in this book, actually. I'm worried, and I know it's untrendy for people, or at least it's treated with contempt when people like me say this, but I'm very, very worried that the way we speak to each other in the world is counterproductive to progress. So those are the things I worry about, which is why I'm no longer on. I don't look at Instagram and stuff, is because I was spending so much time feeling distressed by even people I respect, just kind of saying stuff all the time that my logic nerd kind of critical thinking background is just like, oh, that's going to make things worse. And I guess that's one of the things I worry about. I worry about my kids. I worry about, the climate change. I worry about nuclear proliferation, and I worry about AI, and I worry about the fact that we need a world government to help us with those things, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah, there's some pretty decent things to worry about.
Yeah.
One thing you didn't do, because you have a very impressive Instagram bio, you have excellent teeth. Did you ever consider putting that? Excellent teeth, ever?
They're quite new. They're my fake teeth.
Oh, is that what they are?
You've got perfect teeth too. They can't be real.
They are real. My teeth are real.
Don't believe a word of it.
They are real. Okay, I've had braces twice.
Okay, twice.
And
braces.
Invisalign.
Yeah, okay.
Look at
3.
These are all
They're
real.
beautiful, but no veneers.
No veneers.
And some whitening. I capped them all about 2 years ago, and it made it so obvious to me. I think I look like a weird newsreader now, but apparently most people didn't notice at all. Which of all the things people come to me with, it's not often compliments on us. Not often. You're really handsome.
Oh, well,
You've got great teeth, so I'll take teeth.
Excellent.
Thanks, even though they're fake.
I will give you another compliment. I suspect you've had a few about this, Matilda and the music. I listen to it on repeat in my household. Yes, I have 2 girls who love musicals.
You have an excuse.
I have an excuse, but I listen to it in the car when they're not with me. And Revolting Children, I'm going to say, that's the best song on the. Do you call it a soundtrack? It's a soundtrack.
Yeah, on the movie soundtrack.
Yeah, the movie soundtrack.
Yeah, I agree. The version of Revolting Children on the movie soundtrack elevates it beyond, and that's Chris Nightingale's orchestrations and stuff. But I'll tell you a hot secret. I'm just recording lots of stuff at the moment. I think I'm going to put out an album. I think I'm going to call it Attic Songs, which is basically like going back over the last 30 years and going, what haven't I recorded and released, and I'll just chuck it out.
Yeah.
But I recorded with my band a version of Revolting Children because I'm so inspired by that arrangement of it. I'm going to do like a sort of dirty punk version of it, try and release it. And I've done it exactly the same beats per minute as that version, so I want to match my performance of it up to that video.
Do you need a dancer or a backup dancer or anything in that? I'm not very good, but I have very good teeth. I can just smile and try and dance.
Yeah, I'm glad you like that song, and I'm glad you listened to it. I just think that movie was so cool.
Epic. We're going to play, for those who haven't been fortunate enough to hear Revolting Children, firstly, how dare you, but also let's take a listen.
revolting style, and we'll have the church revolting. We're
Revolting! I just love it. And because I just think children can be really revolting, and I don't believe that was the premise of that song. That was more a celebration of revolting children. But when my children are being revolting, I just really enjoy that song.
Yeah.
As an insult to my children.
The pun sort of got lost in history, but it's such a fun pun, like the peasants are revolting. And it's a very Roald Dahl pun, because I was so sort of marinated in Roald Dahl when I was little, and he has a book of poems called Revolting Rhymes. So throughout Matilda, there's those little tips of the hat to Roald's other work, and so the word revolting is such a Dahlian word, and the way that children can be both heroes and little brats.
Yeah.
In fact, their heroism is their bratness. It's their messy sort of immaturity that helps them rise up against these despotic, controlling adults.
And just watching you listen to that and still mouthing the words, do you remember surely you can't remember all the lyrics of all the songs you've written?
No, I don't. Some songs I've forgotten. Someone requested a song on my last tour, and I went, I didn't write that song. And then I realised I had. I mean, Matilda's been such a huge part of my life, and it's never a negative part. Maybe 5 times a week I get a text from some friend of a friend saying my kid's doing Matilda at their primary school in South Africa or Chile, or, and can you please send a video to say good luck? And I hope I mostly get to them all.
Do you know people charge for those things?
Yeah, Cameo come after me all the time.
Yeah, I can't imagine charging for that. But I'm not a very business-minded person, but I've been asked a lot to do birthday messages and stuff. They're like, can you send me a 30-second message? And then I go and send 5 minutes. I go and research who the person is, and I'm like, for your Aunt Betty, I'll do something for her 60th.
Well, it's good to know. I'm coming after you next time I have a birthday. But
are you looking for a freebie?
Yeah, I want a freebie. The Cameo thing is the only way I would do it is if I could leverage it for charity. But I don't even think that's the best way for me to do charity stuff. But if I just went, look, I'll do you a 5-minute little song. I'll do you a little song for 5 minutes, and it's $10,000. And then it would just be rich people, and all that money can go to children's arts charity. I could
that's
imagine
a nice
that.
way to do that.
I've thought about it. I might get there, but it does take away your creative juices when you're doing stuff for individuals. I'd rather make stuff that everyone can consume.
Oh, no, I was just more the happy birthday.
I know.
Hi, I hear you love blah, 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 wishing you a happy birthday.
But
anyway,
I can't do all of them. So
no, you can't.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Look,
we're very lucky.
Let's talk. Let's collaborate. I feel like there's an opportunity. You have a smiling dancer. We do a cameo.
Yeah.
I think we've got something. You've previously written songs, Come Home, which is about Cardinal Pell, and I Still Call Australia Homophobic. What would your anthem now be for the country or the state of human rights in the world?
I wrote it. I wrote it, and it just won the biggest advertising prize on the planet. It's called Play It Safe, and I wrote it for the Sydney Opera House, and that's my anthem for now. And so the Sydney Opera House turned 50, and they asked me to write a song, and I wrote a song and performed it, and it was directed by Australia's most successful advertising director, Kim Garrig, she's won Emmys and blah, blah, and she's just won a Cannes Lion. And it's called Play It Safe, and it's an ironic song. I mean, it's been watched 1 billion times in the world or something. It's just that Australians everyone watched it.
What's the message?
It's to get out of your tribe.
Yeah, right.
Get out of your bubble. But it's all satire. So it goes, you got to stick to your convictions. You got to nail down your views. You got to steer clear of that discomfort you feel when you're walking in another person's shoes. You got to work out who your team is and wear the flag with pride. Find a box that makes you comfortable and then stay the heck inside.
Yeah.
So it's that. And it's not my first song appealing for people to extend their empathy but beyond their own group. I've written The Fence, which is 15 years old, which is called In Defense of the Fence, which sounds a bit like a song about apathy, but it's a song about complexity. I've got a song called 15 Minutes of Shame, which is about how we shame people and eventually they'll come for you too. So
you've written all the anthems for the
I've written
times.
a lot of songs,
Yeah.
but I think I'm very, very proud of Play It Safe, and it's an interesting Rorschach test because people, progressives like me, they see it as upbraiding the conservative right, which the song does.
But it's also about them very much.
But it's very much about, I don't think you have to draw equivalence between the effect of the reactionary alt-conservative right and the kind of super one-minded, public-shaming kind of what we unfortunately call woke, far left. You don't have to draw equivalents to understand that they are being affected by the same thing, which is epistemic bubbles caused by social media.
Yes, my only pushback to that is one has more power than others. So some might be
totally,
angry and mobilise online and in your Twitter comments. Another has institutional power to suppress, to expel.
There's people with institutional power on both sides of that, definitely. I mean, the most of the extreme angry right are not powerful. They're poor and ill-educated and,
Oh, you're talking sort of alt-right.
Well, I'm just talking about the extremes, the people who, once they decide what team they're on, they don't consider... I believe our job is to push as hard as we can to expand our empathy out to as many different people as possible, which is different from letting the world ruin your life by always feeling devastated by the suffering of everybody in the world. We can't do that either. But to the extent that we want the world to be a peaceful place, we do need, I don't know, like coal miners who have lost their job and, hate greenies to think about what it might be like to be a young black kid incarcerated, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And we need educated Asian, Australian, lefty somethings to really think about what it would be like to be a not particularly educated, disempowered white bloke right now. It has to go all ways or no ways.
There's a growing conversation, and it's one that can be easily shut down, but I think it's one that's important to have, about one vulnerable group of people that we don't spend a lot of time talking about. There's not a lot of policies. There's certainly not a lot of money necessarily thrown that way, and that is poorly educated, disenfranchised, working class young white men. Do you worry that because...
I can't tell whether you're being ironic.
No, I'm not.
Do you really think that is a group we should think about?
Yes, because they're the group that are being radicalised. They're the group that are most likely to turn to violence. I mean, not in the same way as we know historically marginalised groups are not only overlooked but deliberately punished by successive governments and policies, whether they're First Nations people or ignored and overlooked or minimised, people with disability.
I don't know if I'd say deliberately punished. I think mostly history is riddled with good intentions, poorly executed.
You reckon?
Yeah.
I think that's very generous. But we can...
You just talk go talk to who I was listening, because I try to listen as widely as possible, because I try to put my money where my mouth is in this. I try to always challenge my assumptions. It's really hard work when you are sure about something. And, I look back, there's a big conversation to have about how I feel about my old work and all that. But
well, let's get back to our disenfranchised young white men.
Yes.
I don't lose sleep over it. I'm going to say that. But I do wonder if by not engaging that group of people, we're just sowing the seeds for more damage for them and the damage that they can inflict on society.
It's a beautiful example, and I love that you're saying this unironically, because my respect for you, which I walked in here with my respect for you very high, but it just went up another bar because it's hard to seriously look at that group because of history. But history, you can't blame contemporary, just like you can't blame a, young black kid who grew up in the hood in a drug-dealing family who stabbed someone and ended up on death row. We understand that wasn't his fault. You can't blame people for the history of the patriarchy. You simply... Humans don't easily carry the weight of history on their own shoulders. You can't yell at a man that they are to be blamed for history's white supremacy or patriarchy. It just doesn't feel natural. It's like gaslighting them, saying, take the sins of your father on your shoulders. You're like, no, they're fucking not. I'm just trying to do my job, mate.
Yeah.
So it is a perfect example of counterproductive behaviour to scream at people that they are privileged when they don't feel privileged, even if they're wrong. Even if they are privileged and they don't understand it, screaming at them that they're privileged if they don't feel it is counterproductive. It's going to make things worse. And when we look at things like male violence, Like the idea of shouting at men for male violence is just, I mean, it couldn't be more useless. I mean, male violence is as much of a problem for men as it is for women, notwithstanding sexual violence, obviously.
Yes.
But male violence is a problem for everyone. And unless you're a complete evolution denier, you know that young men are the most violent mammals, the most violent sapiens, and society is all about trying to work out what to do with that. You can teach them not to be, you can punish them if they are violent, you can try and rehabilitate them if they've gone wrong, you can give them games that they can play to get rid of that feeling, you can send them to war like we have traditionally, make them learn how to use a sword or a gun or a bomb. But you shout at them and tell them that they're bad people and it'll make things worse, especially because the greatest correlate, as far as I know, between men and violence is mental health. So, you got to worry about any disenfranchised group and extend your empathy to all of them and not let things like colour and gender get in the way of going, okay, so if I was that guy, what would I need to be a better guy? What would I need? Okay, I'm that dude. What do I need? What would convince me? And I tell you what, have you ever been convinced by someone screaming at you on the internet? Have you ever had your mind changed one iota by someone abusing you on the internet?
No, absolutely
not.
not.
And why do we think men will have their minds changed? Like blokey, aggressive, mentally unwell, maybe men with our horrible dads. Do you think shouting on the internet is going to change them?
Well, you've decided you don't want to be shouted at on the internet anymore. How's social media detox going for you? Well, it's not detox, it's you've broken up with social media. You said it's you, not me, to social media.
Yeah, that's right. It's you, not me. I've decided that that it's not good for my mental health. It's not good for my parenting. I was very addicted to it. I actually hate my phone. It's an awful thing. Unfortunately, I think it does more harm than good, even though it does a huge amount of good. I think as a communication tool, it's great. But the particular algorithms, the particular types of social media that we've ended up falling in love with, we fell in love with them because they did it deliberately to us. They addicted us. They're terrible for our concentration. They're terrible for our discourse. They're terrible for our mental health because we see other people having perfect lives and think our lives are shit, but we also see other people distressed and think that distress should be ours, that we have a moral obligation to take on board the distress of other people, which
sometimes we do, though.
Is very human.
Do you miss out on like cultural moments or even news? Because most people get their news from social media, or are you still a newspaper and television guy? No.
So I don't want to overstate this, but I'll be deliberately provocative.
Ooh.
I don't think it's a moral good to know about the suffering of everyone in the world. Beyond what you're going to be able to act on and affect positively. So let me give you an example, right?
This is like taking ignorance is bliss to a whole nother level.
Well, it's not a whole nother level. It's just the original level. It's just the base level.
Well, no, because ignorance is bliss used to be because you weren't able to know. You were ignorant because of your lack of education or lack of access.
You're a farmer. All you know is your horse and your wife and the sun and the
now
the
ignorance is bliss.
Creek.
You're saying it can be a choice and should be a choice.
Yeah. So you need to curate your circle of concern. So earlier, this that question mark does one. Sorry, that sounded like a sort of. But my working theory is one needs to curate one's circle of concern. The thing is, we do it involuntarily. So you are much more agitated by, one terrible disaster that's happening in the world than you are by another terrible disaster. Not that. That's, by the way, that's whataboutism in a good way. One should always ask oneself, why am I agitated by this but not that? And it's usually because we are more agitated by suffering of people who look like us and feel like us and share cultural, which is totally as it should be. So earlier I said we need to expand.
I don't know if it's as it should be, but it's as it is because we're tribal.
As it is, because we're tribal. And I always, it's a horrible reference, but, the stress caused by the loss of Madeleine McCann. Do you remember Maddie McCann? Compared to the loss of, I think there was an earthquake in Iran during that time where 5,000 kids were killed the same week or whatever, That's also, there's lots of psychology going on there, individuals versus groups, and the way people grieve we don't relate to and all that stuff. But so I said we should expand our empathy as much as we can, and I really believe that. I especially believe that's potent when it comes to our community, right? So Our job is to keep our community good, primarily. Your family, you understand that when I talk about your family, right? You're obviously going to care more about your kids and your partner, and then you'll care about your friends and your cousins. This is all fine. And we should care about the mental health and the environmental health and the cultural health and the political health of New South Wales, and then we should care about Australia. And then we should care about the world and all that. And we should extend it as far as we possibly can, especially when it comes to individuals. When someone pisses you off, you should go, what would it feel like to be them? But then there's this other thing where all the world's grief is coming through this little thing that we can't even put away from our beds, for God's sake. We're lying in bed and we're reading the distress of someone here and someone there, and, someone who's got a very, very strong opinion on something that feels correct to us, but we don't know if they're right or not, If you are taking in all the distress, and the news, by the way, is not the world. The news is literally an algorithm and a bunch of people trying to get you agitated by the thing that agitates you most. You're not getting a perfect cross-section of the world's news. You're getting the thing that makes you angriest or laugh, because it's a funny dog.
Yeah.
And we're getting fed it all day, every day, and the people making the news are motivated to find the edgiest stuff all the time. So you're not getting the news, you're getting fed an agitating story. And that makes you a worse mother and a worse partner and a worse friend and a worse member of your Sydney community and a worse member of your New South Wales community, arguably. And if all the other news that distresses me, the 24-hour news, the blah, blah, if that distresses me so I'm less effective and less kind and less able to smile in the morning and help my kid who has their own problems and blah, blah, surely it's an ethical evil to let your capacity to help in the ways that you've decided you can help be damaged by being distressed all the time by everyone's pain, because you can't possibly shoulder everyone's pain.
No, I understand that, but the world you're painting is one in which somebody's taking away from distressing images because it paralyses them and makes them unable to be effective advocates, and instead channeling it into a myriad of ways, from soup kitchens to scholarships. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
What I worry about is that just ending with, well, look away because it's too hard. Now I'm just going to binge on Netflix series and do fuck all.
I agree, but exactly. So that's the problem. I think the main, people keep trying to point to why the mental health crisis seems so correlated with the introduction of smartphones and social media. And they go, it's because people are jealous, or that it's because girls are mean online, or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's just our brains are completely overwhelmed by dopamine, and then whatever the bad ones are,
trauma.
distress. I just think it's making us less happy. And I think if we're less happy in this country, don't you think it's so important that Australia doesn't become extreme like America has?
No,
Isn't that just so important? Aren't we amazing compared to America in terms of...
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We're amazing, right?
Yeah, especially when much of Europe went to the right, or it's going to the right now, and then it looks like the US will go back to Trump, that Australia managed to, despite lockdowns and all of that fracture,
vote
maintain
for a centre-left government.
Yes.
If they were too far left, we wouldn't have.
Yes.
We have to acknowledge that. Then we progressives who really, really, really wanted The Voice to go through, we all freaked out when The Voice didn't go through. And for a week, some of my most intelligent friends just shouted about how 65% of Australia is racist. And I'm like, I don't know, does that... Next time there's a vote advocating for Aboriginal autonomy or whatever, do you reckon that 65% are going to go, oh, well, because you called us racist, next time we're going to really listen to you this time? Like, I'm not talking about Indigenous friends. Their distress is personal and understand. It's all the distresses. We've drifted into a slightly different topic.
No,
here.
but I also feel that we didn't really have time to process and unpack that, because then October 7 happened.
And it got those two things got conflated in a really poisonous, horrible way.
And I think probably what you're referring to, and certainly what's been traumatising for me and a lot of other people, is the ongoing atrocities in Gaza, the day in, day out. Like, we are not, and I'm with you here, we are not meant to see live stream genocide. We are not meant to see that many people dead and maimed. No. I have seen that many dead children that I wake up at night with those images in my head.
So why do you look? I know the answer-ish, but
I have tried to look away as much as I can because it's important to be informed, yes, but I'm not sure going from seeing 1,000 children without limbs to seeing 2,000 is going to change my level of being informed. Like I'm informed, I get what's going on. I find now that people send me stuff all of the time, even when I don't want to look.
Yeah.
And so even though I've tried to take, and obviously as a journalist it's hard to, and as somebody with who does various things online, it's hard for me to step away because it's part of my job.
And I know I'll get in trouble, and I'm not being glib. But there are as many children dying in the rest of the world, not in such a dense thing. It's a terrible, terrible war. And I know I'll get in trouble for not using the right word, But you're not looking at all the death in the world. You're not going looking for videos of some of the sort of warlord stuff in Africa.
People have said that to me before.
And it's not whataboutism. It's just that you're not, and it's good that you're not.
No, but what the difference is, people are like, what about the people in Sudan?
Yeah.
What about the Uyghurs? What about this? And in part it's a whataboutism. The difference is...
What about is often a good question. Just because it's got a word from the internet doesn't mean it's not a good question.
Fair enough. My response to that is... They aren't Australia's ally. We don't call them good friends. We don't support them militarily, financially. We've never seen it. There have been atrocities, and I don't want to use whether it's war, conflict. People don't like the word war because the power structure is so lopsided, whatever.
Obviously, the other one people bring up is Syria, whatever it was. Yeah. And you weren't as engaged in that because we didn't have access and because it's not a Western power.
Yes, in part because, it's the social media live streaming, so we've never before seen this.
It just feels like you shouldn't watch it. I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying that.
No, don't. No, I've spoken on this very programmed a PTSD expert who says the same thing, that you shouldn't, because our brains are not actually wired to consume so much traumatic. It actually does nobody good. So the difference is there have not been that many children and journalists killed in such a concentrated time. We've never seen it on our live streamed on our phones, and Australia hasn't had a role to play or can have a role to play in stopping and minimising it and failing to do so. So I think those three make it different to what is happening in other parts of the world.
Yeah. Are you helping? And if you're not helping, what are you doing? What are you doing bathing in those images? Why are you doing it to yourself if you're not going to do something about it? And does every new child you see mutilated increase or decrease your capacity, or neutral your capacity to help?
I agree with you that it was paralysing for a moment, so I've stopped looking where possible. Sometimes things just appear or people send you don't realise in a WhatsApp group and you're just like, that's not what I had
an Uber driver show me a beheading. I would never, ever look at that
stuff.
That's what he's like, look at this. This is happening in my country. This is a different war at a different time. And
so sometimes involuntarily consuming things. So yes, I have, because it was beginning to affect my ability to function, let alone do something. Am I doing things? Yes. I'm doing within my capacity. I am doing as much as I can.
I understand.
But there is also, I'll be honest, the additional element which saddens me is seeing the dehumanisation, if you are an Arab or a Muslim, the acceptance of a pile of bodies which would completely not be acceptable if they were white bodies, or,
there's that many white bodies in the Ukraine and in Russia. I mean, there's Russian boys, but these Russian soldiers, I mean, they're just kids sent to the front, it's terrible.
It is, but we've taken in Ukrainian refugees. We've barely taken anybody in from Gaza. So just seeing the different treatment and the different regard for life based on whose it is, for me
the thing I'm not talking about is there is a distinction between Ukraine and Russia, and
one's an ally, one's depends on which side of the...
That's right. Israel is a sort of Western-style democracy in the Middle East, and we're not going to have a conversation about whether it should have ever been there, but it is there. And so a Western democracy in the Middle East is a natural ally to us, given that it's surrounded by countries that are theocratic dictators who want it destroyed. It's not a natural fit for Australia. Australia was never going to go, Hamas, they're our allies. Like, Hamas are, terrible cats.
But so is the IDF, and I'd argue that Israel operates as an ethnocracy because only Jewish people have rights and live freely,
Except
unlike
for the 2 million Arab Muslims who want Israel to win this war.
In greater Israel, because they occupy Gaza and the West Bank, people don't have freedom of movement. People aren't allowed to come and leave. People who are Palestinian from abroad, Australia can't return. So it operates as an ethnocracy with certain rights and Western values for some, and absolute abhorrent treatment for others.
I can't.
Can you acknowledge though that
Australia's response is, I think the average Australian would feel, to get it back to the sort of broader philosophical topic, would feel less empathy for people that don't look or act like them, including Hasidic Jews or who are taking over the West Bank. But I think some of the horrors of October 7, pretty girl at a music festival, would land harder for some than this sort of rubble and brown skin and stuff, without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's pretty upsetting, but it's very real. I was sort of making a slightly edgy point that you just made about white people, and I'm saying, yeah, unfortunately, they look a bit more like me, so my empathy goes out to them more. The human, it's really called homophilia. Humans like the same, and humans are attracted to the same, and not just how they look, but how we speak and what we eat and how we smell and how we wear our hair.
And I think maybe that was probably more obvious in the early stages as everyone was reeling from the horrors of October 7. I think as things have progressed, what I have witnessed, I'm not a protest goer or, at the encampments, you're seeing a growing Jewish community, white progressives, older Australians, people who don't have skin in the game per se, coming along and being like, oh man, like... The
longer this war goes, the more people just want the war to end.
Yeah, and they're like, this suffering is not okay.
Yeah. I find it unbearable, Someone said to me, don't you care? And I was like, what's the thought experiment? Like,
well, you've been on the block-out list. You're on the block-out list.
What does that mean?
Oh, good, you're not on social media, so you don't know. So there are... It more started in the United States around the Super Bowl and the Met Gala, going all these people with big profiles who've done nothing or who've historically taken stances on feminism or whatnot, Black Lives Matter, have said absolutely nothing about what's happening to Palestinians daily. And so there was a list, block out, and then they would go, oh, Beyonce hasn't said anything or whatever it is.
Isn't that disgusting behaviour?
And then you would go and block.
Narcissistic, gross, self-aggrandizing.
What? For
like going, I'm going to
block Beyonce.
Well, I'm just, I think, because of how I read the world, that person I don't know not saying something that I believe, there's something wrong with that person. Like, you can't have a world like that. We have to be able to tolerate the greatest difference that we possibly can tolerate. It is childish to say Beyonce is required to have my opinion on this when I can show you that the only reason you have the opinion you have is because of your cultural inputs.
No, but that's not true. Every human rights organisation, including B'Tselem in Israel, all pretty much, whether it's Amnesty, UNICEF, Doctors Without Borders, B'Tselem, they are all...
Sorry, I'm not saying they wouldn't condemn the war. Yeah.
They all have the same views that the war crimes that are happening, the persecution of journalists, the killing of civilians, the maiming and disabling of civilians, the ongoing occupation, the lack of liberty, movement and dignity for Palestinians, that nobody is safe and free until everybody is safe and free. So this is not a 1.8 billion Muslims versus however many Jewish people.
No, Jewish people have a different set of ideas than you.
Human right. But
do you understand that to be true?
I do understand that to be true, but I also understand that any views or facts that I have echo every human rights organisation in the world, and they aren't doing it because of a Muslim-Jew thing. They're doing it because of human rights and international law. So I think it's too reductive to reduce it to religion because it's beyond religion. It's the treatment of humans.
I'm not reducing to religion at all. I'm just saying your cultural inputs are why you are you and their cultural inputs are why they are them. And my cultural... It's just that policing other people's opinions on the internet is just the most counterproductive and silly thing to do because you're not acknowledging that that person has a different set of information than you. So what we have to work out is how we sit with the fact that there are good people, I'm almost quoting Donald Trump, there are good people who believe really different things from you about lots of stuff. And when I say good people, I mean, like, I know lots of lefty friends who believe all the right things, but they're assholes, you know?
Yeah.
And I know lots of conservative people who are really kind, but they've just got different beliefs and they're quite religious or whatever. We just have to work out how to make sure that all this news coming in, all our anxiety, all our passion, all our social media feeds, our personal responsibility is to try and figure out whether the way we are acting in the world is increasing or decreasing conflict. And I think we can mostly do better, including myself.
No, I think we all can.
In terms of thinking about how other people, that other people come from different places from us, you know? And it's sometimes really, really hard because you feel really, really angry that people don't see what you see.
We've covered so much, but we didn't
and yet so little.
We haven't talked about your first non-fiction book, You Don't Have to Have a Dream, and that's some advice for the incrementally ambitious. You provide 9 life lessons in it. I'm going to rattle through a couple that jumped out at me. Don't seek happiness.
Yeah.
What else? What else are we seeking if it's not happiness?
You should, as it says, you should think about creating happiness for others and you'll get some as a side effect.
Oh, I love that.
It's more don't let that be the thing you're pursuing. If you have if you're making a meaningful contribution to your community, you'll feel happy.
And I guess this is something we've spent a bit of time unpacking. Be hard on your opinions because we must think critically and not just about the ideas of others. Be hard on our beliefs, your own beliefs. I think that's probably a slowly dying art.
The idea is to treat, in philosophy you talk about the principle of charity, right, which is basically argue unto others as you would have argue unto you. So when someone has an opinion that's not yours, firstly, try and see the best version of it, the most generous version of it, and secondly, be as hard on what you think as you want to be on them and as nice on what they think as you want them to be on you. And I mean, it's a total fantasy land, right? It's not how humans work, but I reckon we should try. I reckon we should try more.
I do. I reckon so too. But you have said advice for the incrementally ambitious. I reckon that's the ambitious.
Yes, that's very ambitious.
That part is, and that really, brings us full circle because the polarization, social media consumption, the identity politics, the cancel culture, that is all when people are not hard on their own opinions, really.
And see the other as the other. See other people who don't agree with them, not just as people who have a different set of information, but as the other tribe. And it's really hard not to do. And I feel it and have to constantly suppress it.
Who do you think your book's for? Other than everybody, because it's going to be a bestseller.
I've got to talk about this book. It's got 3 of my university speeches in it. I've given 3 speeches for 3 fake degrees, 3 honorary doctorates.
I just love that. But they're like, you got like the Cliff's Notes version of doctorates because you didn't actually have to do the work, and that's how I want to do it.
Luckily, they're meaningless, so I'm not competing for any doctor's employment opportunities.
Yeah, you're not providing heart transplants.
No, I don't put it in my instant bio. but
I'd be doctoring all the time.
I know, right? It's tempting. I wrote 3 speeches and then this year I wrote 3 essays to accompany those speeches. And one speech is a sort of life lessons one, the one you were referring to, which went viral and has been watched by hundreds of millions of people. And the other 2 are less viral, but one's really about, they're really about creativity and how to put good ideas into the world.
Yeah.
And I hope in talking to you, you feel from me that what I want is to put good ideas into the world. I want that really, really badly.
Yeah.
And I think me cutting myself off from some of the 24-hour input of agitation algorithms is part of me trying to give myself a space where I can put big, beautiful, open-armed, huggy, loving ideas into the world in my art, but also in my book and also when I'm talking on podcasts.
I love that. I love your big open arms. I'm coming in for a hug.
Big hairy ginger arms.
I'm coming in.
That was Antoinette Lattouf and Tim Minchin. I hope you enjoyed that chat. I certainly did. Now, as Antoinette would say, it's her favourite time of the week. It is the weekend list time. And this week we have a special guest. We have social extraordinaire and our digital producer who is behind the weekend briefing videos that you would see in your feed, Chris Spiru. Thank you for joining us on the Weekend List.
Oh my God, thank you so much, producer extraordinaire Helen Smith. It is a pleasure to be here once again.
What is your first recommendation?
Okay, look, my first recommendation is a listening recommendation. It is a song that I recommend our weekend briefers get around as soon as possible.
Okay, what is it?
It is the debut single of Little Mix band member Jade. She is the last Little Mix member to release solo music. The song is called Angel of My Dreams, and future Helen is going to play the song here. Dude, it is such a good song. It's kind of got like, it harks back to like prom night, slow dance, versus like this new era of pop that we're hearing at the moment. And we spoke about it this week. Well, not me, but the hosts of the briefing, Sasha, spoke about it this week, about the new age of pop and the pop renaissance that the girlies are bringing in. Jade's really delivering on that, sort of promise. She takes an apparent swipe at Simon Cowell.
The well-known creator of many groups, including One Direction, including Little Mix, and
Fifth Harmony.
Fifth Harmony?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
I've watched the music video for this and it's amazing.
Oh, and the references to like Simon in the song itself, she's like, selling my soul to a psycho is a lyric, and his label was called Psycho Records, which is insane. And then there's this big like guy that she's trying to impress. He's obviously like a record label boss and kind of posits him as the villain. Again, this is all alleged, so please don't come for us. Any defamation lawsuits, please, we send them on their merry way. But guys, listen, it's a great song.
My next recommendation is food.
Of course.
Tofu steak.
Yes, you showed me this week.
Yes, so I found this recipe on Instagram and it's going to be in the show notes so you can have a little look there. But pretty much you get a block of tofu, you cut it in half, you squash it between pans, or you can just, I don't know, chopping boards, but something heavy that you flatten it. You know how you do that with chicken meat?
Yeah.
So you'll...
I'm so sorry. I've never flattened chicken meat. I've sliced it in half. I've butterflied the chicken.
No, you do it when you make a schnitzel. Side point.
Okay.
You kind of flatten this tofu, you cut ridges between it, and then you put the teriyaki sauce throughout, kind of marinate the tofu.
Yes.
Pan fry it. It goes crispy, golden, but then still kind of soft in the middle. I love this because I love, as Antoinette said, we're trying to do less meat. Meatless Mondays, except she's doing seafood Saturdays. but it is really fun. And if you just want to try it out, look, you might hate it, but that is my recommendation. I don't think it's going to be for everyone. Just going to put that out there.
No, I'll be honest. When I saw the video that you showed me, I thought it was indeed steak. So I got really excited by it. And then when you showed me how that steak was made, I was severely and bitterly disappointed.
Fake steak.
Yeah, fake steak.
Great. What's your second recommendation?
Okay, my second recommendation is because we, unlike a lot of our friends and a lot of people in Australia right now, are not in Europe.
No.
And we are schlepping it through a horrendous winter, especially in Sydney. It is super, super cold at the moment. So for those looking for an extra layer on top of their normal duvet, no one calls it a duvet.
Some people do.
For those looking for an extra layer, I'm like, don't turn on the heater. It's unnecessary. You do not need to waste and spend more on your power bill.
Not in the Cosy Lives.
Not in the Cosy Lives. Get down to Big W.
Okay.
There are $19 blankets. They are $19. They are huge. They cover they've got different sizes. So the one that I purchased was for a queen bed, but I just use it on the couch.
Yeah.
It's super thick. It's super fluffy, super cheap. You can wash it and it doesn't fall apart, which is a good sign.
Oh, does it lose some of its fuzz though?
It actually hasn't.
Oh.
I know. I'm genuinely shocked. I've put it through the wash. I even put it with some other clothes to see if it falls apart on other clothes. It does not. Maybe I got lucky, but seriously, highly recommend.
That is a good recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, $19, Big W. Great. My last recommendation is doing a deep dive on Kamala Harris on TikTok. Now, stay with me. If you have not seen the Kamala Harris, Brat Summer, Charlie XCX mixes social compilation videos, you're missing out.
Now, Helen, please contextualize for our listeners who may not be across Brat Summer.
Okay, Brat Summer is Charlie XCX, the singer. Her
Yes.
album is called Brat.
Yep.
We are having a Brat Summer. I know it's winter here, guys. We will have a Brat Summer.
It's coming.
It's coming. But pretty much old footage of some of Kamala's speeches has been crossed with Brat, the album with Charlie XCX songs. And there's this one speech that's gone viral about coconuts falling from a tree.
You have to play it,
Play
please.
a little bit here.
Yes.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what
It's such a good song. It is such a good remix.
Yes, it is. But I just think it's so interesting. We talked about this week with Biden coming out of office and...
Honestly, what shocking news this week.
And the fact that it's nowhere near over.
No.
We're going to be talking about this for months. This really is a sugar hit as well. If you want a little bit of fun, getting away from the depressing politics of the Biden-Trump kind of arguments or whatever you can call those, this is fun.
It is so fun.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
So do that. I recommend that. Well, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris.
Oh, you are so welcome. And actually, while I'm here, for the weekend briefers who have made it this far, troopers, honestly, pat on the back for you guys, be sure to head to YouTube and search the Listener Newsroom. You can watch every single chat Antoinette has had on the weekend briefing, including this week's with Tim Minchin. You guys can watch the conversations instead of just listening.
So thank you so much for being with us. It's always a pleasure. Remember, if you want more of the weekend briefing, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts from. And why not give us a cheeky rating and review while you're there for this fabulous interview with Antoinette and Tim. You can rate and review every episode as well. We will be back in your ears bright and early on Monday morning, where the rest of the team will have the latest headlines straight to your headphones, along with some very interesting interviews. Stay safe, everyone.
Have a bright summer.